The 80s were probably the golden era of motorsport, and the only reason for that was that all the major FIA categories had no rules at all. No power restriction, no speed limits and no aerodynamics restriction. Just build the best thing possible and win that race. This was the philosophy. Like with the Group B, all the major manufacturers entered Group C, and for sure, they built some true memorable cars. Cars like Jaguar XJR9, Peugeot 905, Mazda 787B and Porsche 956 would always be some of the greatest cars of all time. But Group C saw also the return of Mercedes to the racing scene. Mercedes retired from motorsport back in 1955 after the Le Mans disaster. In this video I'm going to talk about the Mercedes C11, Mercedes C291 and the forgotten C112. Even though prior to the C11 came the C9, I'm not going to talk much about that car in this video. Since the C9 is a very important car and a true game changer, I'm going to make a video only about that car. So guys, hello and welcome back to another story of video. And here's the story of the Mercedes C11, C291 and C112. I'm not going to talk much about Sauber either, because like with the C9 I'm going to make a video only about the legendary Swiss team. Maybe Sauber isn't the greatest team right now in Formula 1, but Sauber has achieved a lot of things through their lifetime. Plus, a team that could survive Formula 1 for 25 years is definitely a great team, which definitely deserves a video. Sauber was one of the first teams to enter Group C. In 1982, Sauber presented the SHS C6, a car powered by a Ford engine tuned by Cosworth. In first glance, the C6 looked like a promising car, but sadly, because of a number of accidents, poor reliability, the C6 failed to achieve any success. Sauber abandoned the Ford V8 engine for a straight-six BMW M88-1. The BMW engine proved to be a little bit better compared to the Ford engine, but again failed to achieve any success. Everything would change in 1985, when Sauber was testing their new car at the Mercedes wind tunnel. Mercedes was impressed by the result, so they signed a deal with Sauber, when Mercedes would provide the engines. The engine of choice was the newly developed Mercedes 5-liter V8 M117, which also was equipped with a pair of turbos, which increased the power at over 750 horsepower. But the power was restricted at 650, which was enough to help the C8 to set the second highest speed at Le Mans in 1985. Things would change again in 1987, with a newly built C9. The first 2 years were not so great, with ups and downs, until 1989, when Mercedes introduced the M119. The change was mind-blowing. The C9 managed to win 7 out of 8 races, and also won the 24-hour of Le Mans. That year, Mercedes Sauber managed to win the constructor, the driver and the team championship. The silver arrows were back. Even though Sauber had a competitive and most importantly a winning car, they went and built another car for the 1990 season, the C11. Where the C10 went, you might think? C in German is very hard to pronounce C10, since C and 10 have a very similar sound, so the car was called C11. The C11 was still powered by the 5-liter V8 engine from the C9, but beside that everything else was new. The C11 had a carbon fiber chassis, differently from the C9, which had an aluminum one. The new chassis was designed for more downforce, with a lower front area. At 320 km per hour, it generated 2666.7 kilos of downforce, about 453.6 kilos more than the C9 at the same speed. Also, the body was different, now slimmer, lighter and stiffer. Sauber decided not to participate at the 24 Hour of Le Mans, and instead they decided to focus on defending the world title. The first race was at Suzuka, but the car did not actually race because of an accident during the practice. The team decided to use the C9 for this race, and they managed to win, proving that the C9 was still a very capable car. After debuting and winning at Monza, Mercedes headed to Silverstone, when the results were terrible. The car of Mauro Baldi and Jean-Louis Schlesser was retired after an engine failure, and the car of Jean Mess and Michael Schumacher was disqualified for receiving outside assistance during the qualifying session. The rest of the season saw only victories for the Swiss-German team. At Spa they finished the race at the 1st and 8th place. At Gijón, 1st and 2nd. At Nürburgring and Donington, also 1st and 2nd. In Montreal, in 1st and 9th. And in last race in Mexico, one of the cars, the Michael Schumacher C11, won the race, and the other C11 was disqualified for using more than allowed amount of fuel. With winning 7 out of 8 races that C11 raced that season, Sauber managed to win the second championship in the row. Like the Group B, the Group C was crazy popular back then, sometimes surpassing the popularity of F1. And of course the Group C was popular. Cars were becoming more powerful every year, and were reaching speeds of over 400 km per hour. But in 1991, FIA decided to change the rules. Now the teams had to build their own engines, which made many private teams, which mostly were using 956s and 962s, to leave the group. Also, the rules said that cars should run with naturally aspired engines, with a maximum displacement of 3.5 liters. These were very similar rules that F1 was using back then. The biggest problem here was that the teams had to build new engines from the ground up. Previously, basically all the teams were using their mass-produced engines, but of course modified, like Mercedes and Jaguar. All these changes made the Group C even more expensive than F1, and this was even worse, because F1 had way more exposure than the Group C. Porsche had already left, and all the teams that were still using Porsches decided to leave too, and Jaguar, which back then was owned by Ford, started using Ford V8 Formula 1 engines. But these new rules also had some cars, like for example Peugeot 905, Jaguar XJR14 and the mighty Mazda 787. Thanks to all this, the 1993 season was cancelled, even before the start, due to the lack of entries, and this was the sad death of Group C. The worst thing in all this story was that FIA made the exact same mistake in the early 70s, when FIA limited the engine size to 3 liters, similar rules that F1 was also using back then. Look, the Group C would have ended up sooner or later because of the main death of the group, but FIA should have known better, so the Group C would have lasted longer. But at least we got a GT1. Like all the others, Mercedes had no other choice, besides building a new engine for the new rules. Mercedes built a flat 12 3.5 liter engine with around 600 horsepower. Like the engine, the rest of the car was completely new. But differently from the others that presented new designs like Jaguar and Peugeot, Mercedes kept the C11 design, even though they made some changes here and there. But because of the short development time, the C291 had tons of problems, and Mercedes were aware of this. So they decided to use also the older C11. The vulnerability of the C291 became obvious through the season. The C291 failed to finish the race at Suzuka, and at Monza finished only in the 14th place. At Silverstone managed to finish the race in the 2nd place, but after this ended up in 15th, 14th and 12th place. But at Autopolis, Japan, the C291 managed to win the race. Mercedes Sauber finished the season at the 3rd place, which isn't that bad. Mercedes continues the C291 project. They try to build a better car, and they actually built the C292. But with costing of owning a Group C team started getting higher, Mercedes and Sauber decided to move to Formula 1, and the rest is history. Mercedes just presented the latest supercar, which indeed is a revolutionary supercar. It's nice to see race engines used as production engines, even though it isn't the same V12 screaming monster that F1 cars used to have, but again it's something that definitely would have an impact. Like another Mercedes supercar built back in the early 90s, but sadly this car never made it to production. I'm talking about the C112. The C112 was a concept car presented by Mercedes back in 1991, and the car had basically everything Mercedes had to offer back then. The C112 was advertised by Mercedes as a road-going C11, but the car shared nothing with the C11. The C11 had a carbon fiber chassis, the C112 had an aluminium one, the C11 had a twin-turbo V8, the C112 had a V12. You see where I'm going? But some of the engineers that were involved with the C111 also work with the C112. The power came from a M120, which was tuned and built just for this car. The 6-liter V12 could produce 480 horsepower at 5200 rpm. Mercedes never gained performance data, but it's assumed that the C112 had a top speed of 310 km per hour and could reach 100 in 4.9 seconds. The engine was connected to a 6-speed manual gearbox, which was similar with the gearbox used for the C11. The C112 was jammed with technology: active aero, active suspension, power steering, power braking, power clutch, variable steering, variable braking, rear steering, air braking, ABS, traction control, tire pressure monitoring, and radar grid control. The active aerodynamics gave additional assistance to the driver when the C112 reached the limit traction in either cornering or braking. This was done thanks to a front and rear spoiler, which were activated hydraulically thanks to some sensors that measured the G-force and gave the information to the ACU, which activated the spoilers. Besides providing downforce, the rear spoiler also acted as an air braker. Mercedes also gave the car active suspensions, with little hydraulic actuators at the top of the shocks that allow it to work against the car's natural momentum when it would want to squat under the hard acceleration, dive under hard braking, lean in hard cornering, or bounce off over repeated bumps in the road. The idea was that you could have a generally soft suspension setup for comfort and to let activated shocks keep the car level and controlled. I couldn't find who actually designed the car. Some sources say that was Cogiola, which is an Italian design house which has worked many times with Mercedes. But I think that the car was built by them and was designed by Mercedes. And Bruno Sacco definitely worked with the car, because you can see his style all over the place. The first moment I saw this car, I thought about the legendary C111. And these two cars shared more than just the name and the gullwing doors. Like the C111, the C112 was a car that was loved by everyone, and like the C111, people were ready to buy this car, no matter the price. Mercedes got 700 requests, but they said no. Werner Neiffer left Mercedes. Neiffer is the guy that came up with the 190, the first generation C-Class, the W140 and the Mercedes racing program. But after he left, the idea of the C112 was considered old and was worth to build. I would love to see this car on the streets, not only because how advanced this car was, but also because I would love to see the C112 to go against other early 90s supercar, like the AB110, F50, XJ220, Diablo and why not F1. But the thing I love the most about this car is the design. The rear of this car reminds me of my childhood, when I used to see W123s, 124s and 201s everywhere, including my father's 123. All these cars are very important for Mercedes. Maybe the C11 might be under the shadow of the C9, but again, it's a car that won Group C. All Group C cars are great, let alone cars that won. Even though the C291 wasn't a successful car, the C291 was the first car that came with a Mercedes engine, built just for racing in years. Plus, it's the car that made Mercedes to move to F1. And we all know what happened after that. And the C112 just predicted the future. All the supercars of the 2000 had everything that the C112 had. So guys, before I end up this video, I want to say that now I have my merchandise store on Redbubble. I will try to add new designs as frequently as possible. But if you have any critique or suggestion for the designs, please let me know so I can make better ones. So guys, thank you for watching and see you next time.